Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, bringing you a live report. It is day one of Big Ten Media Days, and we, of course, have sent the intrepid Kevin Sjuts all the way to Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days. Kevin, bringing you in here live now, again on the Big Ten, on the 1011 Now streaming studio. Kevin, how was the trip to Indy? Did you make it there in time?
Made it in time. Trip to Indy was totally fine, and then busy couple days ahead. We're in the midst of day one of two at Big Ten Football Media Days. Nebraska is scheduled to make its appearance on Thursday. Matt Rule will be accompanied by three of his players, Ethan Piper, Luke Reimer, and Jeff Sims. But that does not mean there is a shortage of things to talk about on day one. Interim head coach at Northwestern, David Braun, is here. He makes the first public comments in front of reporters, cameras, and the like since a hazing allegation story broke about 3 weeks ago regarding the Wildcats football program. Also, Ohio State picked second in the Big Ten East this year. They are here at Big Ten Media Days today, as well as the league's new commissioner. And he kicked everything off, Mr. Petitti, and it's interesting to hear him lay out his vision for the conference for the future.
He kind of has that background more, I guess, maybe in television. Were there any interesting comments from him this morning at all that maybe piqued your ears a little bit?
Yeah, Tony Petitti was fairly scripted with his time in front of the media, about 30 minutes here at Indianapolis. This, of course, the first in-person event with the larger portion of the Big Ten's media members. The couple of notes, I guess, that I would share with you, Bill, and everybody watching right now is Tony Petitti said that the TV rights deal is not completely done at this moment. However, he feels very confident in where it's at. The scheduling of the upcoming season, as CBS tries to balance both the SEC and the Big Ten, that remains in flux a little bit. And, of course, some of those games will be announced on a short notice, short being a week or two. And then also, he went pretty in-depth about his thoughts on NIL. Obviously, it's a huge emphasis in college athletics right now, but there seems to be some legislation lacking with NIL, and he went into, I guess, his personal opinions on it, that he feels there needs to be just some guidelines, some more firm restrictions on NIL, where the money is coming from. He wants to make sure that the institutions are receiving a portion or at least having a say in some of the money, because they are the ones that are enrolling these student athletes who are profiting on their name, image, and likeness. So that's a really broad way to try to share a detailed answer that he gave for about 5 minutes, but NIL, a main hitting point with Tony Petitti today.
Other teams on the podium today, you had Brett Bielema of Illinois, Greg Schiano of Rutgers, Mel Tucker of Michigan State, David Braun, the, again, interim coach of Northwestern. Again, you mentioned, obviously, the first official Northwestern official to make any public comments since that hazing scandal. James Franklin with Penn State, Kirk Ferentz of Iowa, and Ryan Day of Ohio State. Kirk Ferentz, obviously the most senior coach in the Big Ten. I think 25 years now, head coach at Iowa. Is that right?
Entering his 25th year, and yes, Kirk Ferentz knows how to play the Media Days game. Give a long-winded opening answer. Make sure that you shout out the players that are along on the trip to Indianapolis and document a little bit of what those gentlemen have accomplished while in the Iowa program. And then, you'll never get any bulletin board material from Kirk Ferentz, but you can tell that he knows he's got a team that has a chance this year, and even the punter getting a little bit of run here at Big Ten Media Days. Folks talking about Iowa's punter, who got quite a bit of work last year. Remember, Iowa's offense wasn't the best, but they're sticking with their offensive coordinator. That, of course, is Kirk Ferentz's son, Brian.
Yes, that will be an interesting storyline to follow through the year. Again, Iowa's defense and special teams are always usually good enough. It's just been the offense that's had the question marks. Wisconsin picked to win the West by the Big Ten preseason poll, the Cleveland Plain Dealer. They did not speak today, but it will be interesting to hear from Coach Luke Fickell tomorrow. Again, interesting that Wisconsin was picked to win the West, given that sounds like Coach Fickell's installing an air raid offense up there in Madison.
Yeah, Luke Fickell is one of 4 new coaches in the Big Ten Conference. Matt Rule, of course, is one of the others. But, yeah, as we look at the teams that are going to be speaking on Thursday, Bill, Nebraska is among them, as you mentioned, Wisconsin. Also Minnesota and P.J. Fleck. And new today, there are some claims of a toxic culture at Minnesota. And Fleck is the one that leads the charge there. So we have plenty to talk about. And even beyond Northwestern, talking about culture and expectations in the locker room, in the community, academically. They weren't just directed at Northwestern here today in Indianapolis on Wednesday. They were a common question amongst all the coaches. And you heard coaches like Mel Tucker, Brett Bielema, James Franklin all talk about how, Tucker even said that when they get ready for fall camp next week, they will specifically discuss hazing and their zero tolerance policy at Michigan State. But the other coaches that I just mentioned, as they were talking, they weren't directly asked about Northwestern. It's really not their place to answer any questions about that. But instead, those coaches can be asked about what are you doing within your program to facilitate a family atmosphere, make sure your student-athlete welfare is always at the forefront of every discussion and your players feel safe in your organization. And they just talked about a lot of things that I believe Matt Rule is doing at Nebraska, and that is having a lot of team outings away from the sport, making sure that there's a senior leadership team that is holding everybody accountable and making sure that they understand the expectations, not just from the coach, but from the administration, and then just those one-on-one conversations that the coaches continuously have with the student athletes. So that discussion pretty much at the front of the conversations today here at Big Ten Media Days. It will not be dying down on Thursday. However, our focus, of course, will pivot to Matt Rule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Still got to talk a little Husker football today. I had one-on-one interviews with a couple of CBS announcers. Gary Danielson, you'll see my one-on-one with him coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. He, of course, is on CBS's main broadcast team with Brad Nessler. And then Brian Jones, who's one of the studio analysts with CBS Sports. He does a show with Rick Neuheisel. It's fantastic, by the way. Got to go one-on-one with him and just get his opinion on Big Ten football, on Nebraska. And he shared a really cool story with me about playing at Memorial Stadium when he was at UCLA in the late 90s. And he remembers taking a licking that day. And he said that was the day he learned his quarterback, Troy Aikman was a tough football player, because he said Neil Smith had him on the ground all game long, and he remembered being applauded while exiting the field after a loss by Nebraska's fans. He thought that was really rare, and he still remembers it to this day.
It's a super cool story. And again, kind of focusing on what we can expect tomorrow. Again, you and I have heard Matt Rule speak numerous times. This is kind of a chance for everyone else in the Big Ten to kind of hear how good of a speaker he really is. And I feel like maybe a lot of the national media know that, but again, this will be a chance for, all the other beat writers from all the other teams to kind of hear him take the stage. And again, he really does command the stage. So expecting no different, I guess, tomorrow.
Yeah, he certainly does command the stage. That's a good point, Bill. And now it's going to be a chance for league media to meet Matt Rule and also hear just the way that he commands the room when he talks. And there will, of course, be questions about, what his plan is for year one at Nebraska, what steps are being taken to try to get the program turned around. But speaking to other people across the league, including Brian Jones, saying that college football is good when Nebraska is good, because it's a brand name. It's a program that a lot of people remember being highly successful in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So there are some folks within the Big Ten, I'm not saying the coaches and the players in the league, that want Nebraska to be good, but just from a national perception of the league, as Brian Jones said, when Nebraska is good, it's good for the conference that they're in.
Is there anything, Kevin, I don't think there's anything probably at this point that you would, I guess, probably want to ask Matt Rule. Again, we've probably asked and answered a lot of the questions we have, and now it's kind of like, let's see it on the field maybe.
Bill. There's always questions to ask Matt Rule, especially, fall camp starts next week. So some questions remain about Arik Gilbert and his waiver status. Will he be able to practice and play this year? What's the situation look like in the wide receiver room? How many freshmen is he counting on contributing this first year at Nebraska? Who's going to be backing up Jeff Sims, assuming that he is the starter? So the list of questions, it's not at zero. There are still plenty of things to try to learn from Matt Rhule, but I think from the broad brush perspective of his appearance at Big Ten Media Days, let's just see how he does. I think that he's going to leave a very positive impression on the league media and also some of the coaches and players that are going to be here representing their respective schools from the conference.
And so he will speak tomorrow. He will take the main podium at 11 o'clock Central, noon Eastern. You'll have to watch that on Big Ten Network. We will have it on 1011now.com as soon as it's afterwards. And then, Kevin, what's the schedule for the players? When will we be able to hear from the players?
They're going to be talking in the afternoon. Matt Rhule not only does the main podium for 15 minutes, but there are also breakout sessions in which they have a bunch of podiums. They're just off to the left of me right now, where, let's see, I can't do math on the fly, Bill. Let's say 12. There are 12 podiums all at one time. That wasn't math. That was just counting. But they have all these podiums set up, and that's where the players and the coaches can sit. Coaches are available for 45 minutes, each player available for 30 minutes, and that's where you can get questions in about everything. I guess we shouldn't end this, Bill, before referencing or mentioning that, yes, one of the questions at the main podium today, directed at Illinois head coach Brett Bielema, was about the Barbie movie.
Were they just curious if he had seen the Barbie movie? Is he supposed to have taken his team to the Barbie movie? I need more details, Kevin.
Oh, well, Brett is a father of 2 young girls, and he said they're more in the mermaid phase than the Barbie phase right now. So for all the people inquiring about that, there's your answer.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate it. Again, kind of put you on the spot here.
This isn't quite like Super Bowl. This isn't quite like Super Bowl media day, but it is a media day. So if you have a question, fire away. That's what this
now's the chance to answer it or ask it. I suppose more appropriate now than in the middle of the season.
Absolutely right. Especially once they put the pads on and fall camp starts, these coaches are wired in one way, and that's to try to get their team ready for the opening game. For Nebraska, it's August 31st, and all these coaches, they want to talk ball after this. They want to be able to talk about depth chart. Well, sometimes not depth chart, but they want to talk about what they're working on, who's emerging, the prospects for the season, so on and so forth. But it's a lot of football talk once camp begins, and that's for everybody in the league next week. For Nebraska, it's on July 31st.
And, Kevin, for you, you're in Indy. You've been to Indy, I mean, how many times now? 12 times? Is this Nebraska's, 12th year in the league, I think, 2011?
Well, I haven't been every time, and there was one year where Nebraska did not appear at Big Ten Media Days because that was following the death of Sam Foltz. So between Big Ten and Big 12 Media Days, 15 years. I'll say 14, 15 years, and we've seen it at multiple locations, and we've seen it done. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have a favorite spot you're gonna hit this evening? A local establishment, a good steakhouse, anything like that?
Well, we already went there last night. My favorite restaurant in Indianapolis is the District Tap, and last night was trivia night. Ooh. And the guys that I was sitting with for dinner during trivia night, there was one sports question that came on in about the hour that we were there, and yes, we got it right.
All right.
The rest of them, literature, politics, geography.
All over your head.
Wasn't good.
All right. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time. Again, you're going to have, a report tonight at 6 and 10, and then obviously we'll have all the details tomorrow. Again, Matt Rhule taking the podium at 11, and then again in the afternoon on the side session, and you'll have full breakdowns of that tomorrow on 1011, both on air and online, so we'll be able to look for those. So appreciate the hard work, Kevin, and have a good evening, all right? All right, that was Kevin Sjuts, Again, Sports Director, again, for 10-11, obviously working hard there in Indy. Again, day one of Big Ten Media Days. Again, Nebraska not appearing today, but they will appear tomorrow. Again, like I just mentioned, Matt Rule scheduled to take the podium from 11 to 11:15 Central Time. Again, you'll be able to catch that live on Big Ten Network. We will have that, again, on 1011now.com almost as soon as it's done. And then, again, he will be live again for a side session in the afternoon with the players as well. So thanks for everyone for tuning in and for watching. Again, as always, keep it tuned to 1011 both on air and online for all of the latest news, weather, and sports. Hope everyone has a nice Wednesday afternoon.